Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon, not here with Geeky Sparkles, but we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast again. No, we're not going to talk about the movie. We're not going to talk about the box office, but we're going to talk about the Creator Summit. You know, the Creator Summit where Wizards of the Coast invited a bunch of online influencers to partake in a circle jerk. To partake in a summit talking about the future of D&D, and the big focus of this is, of course, 1 D&D, which is apparently is not a thing now. Apparently, they're just updating 5e. Go figure. So they're not even doing a 6e. But also another big topic of discussion is race, because for some reason, race and racism is like the most important talking point in tabletop over the last 5 or 6 years. Like, I don't understand where this came from. Are there some things in older versions of tabletop games that probably wouldn't fly today? Yeah, of course there are. Of course there are. But there have been so many hit pieces written about, especially old school gamers and old school D&D, painting it as this awful racist thing. And these articles, they've come in rapid fire succession every couple of months. It's a NPR, a PBS, a Gizmodo, Atlantic, I think, did one. Polygon, of course, always doing bullshit like this. These articles come out, boom, 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 boom. Every time there's discussion about Dungeons and Dragons, we gotta drag racism into it. And the way that they talk, you'd think this game was invented by the freaking KKK or something. Just really bizarre how the conversation has shifted in the last couple of years. And I think a lot of it's, frankly, deflection, because we know what WotC's really like. We saw what WotC was really like during the OGL 1.1 debacle. And a lot of gamers now are leaving D&D, but we're going to talk about the latest discussion of race in Dungeons and Dragons. And they're not going to have half-elves anymore. They're not going to have half-orcs anymore. You're not going to have half anything anymore, because apparently being half of a race is racist. Apparently, if you're half Asian or half Chinese or half white, it's racist to say you're half Chinese. It's racist to say you're half black and half Latino. You can't do that. You can't do it in this fictional game. Fictional game. And I know Geeky was actually pretty fired up about this earlier, and I do apologize. She went for a long walk. She actually can leave the house now. She's not as sick as she was, but she told me to go ahead and do this one without her. But she was pretty mad. She's like, my God, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. And for somebody who's been trying to get her into tabletop, because as you know, we are actually developing our own tabletop gaming system called Adventure Engine. Go to adventureengine.net, sign up for notifications when we have something more concrete to show you. And I guarantee you we're not going to pull a lot of these shenanigans, but we're a small company. We don't have to do this. Don't have to do things the Hasbro way. But I keep trying to get her into D&D or talk about D&D and explain D&D to her, and she's just like, all I hear is racism, 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 misogyny, racism, and it's like, my God, yeah, it is ridiculous. It really is. So apparently Tannis is not going to be a thing anymore, right? You can't have Tannis half-elven if you're not allowed to have half-elves. One of the most popular characters from Dragonlance, one of the most popular characters from the 80s, Tannis, and we're just going to get rid of him, I guess. I don't know. Was Tannis the elf? I don't know. What are you going to call him? I have no idea. So let's talk about this before we get into it any further. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Again, talking a lot about tabletop. Again, go out to adventureengine.net and sign up to be notified. It is going to be a while. We are getting everything together, and then we're eventually going to do some testing, and then we're not going to release it until it's show ready, as Disney likes to say. But so it could be a while. It could be a while, but just kind of letting you know we're working on this. Lots of alternatives out there to D&D, by the way. You do not have to play D&D. There's so many alternatives out there. But of course, Wizards would think that those other options are racist, I'm sure, no doubt. So this is coming from their summit. This is on N-World. .org, somebody went to this summit and they kind of gave a blow-by-blow of what happened. But you get down to this, and I saw something floating around on Twitter that people were mad about this. And they talk about the 9 species, the new background, the new spells, new weapons for this new version of D&D, which again is not 6e. It's actually 1D&D is a revision of 5e. It's not even a new system. The Goliath is joining the core species. It was so popular. It warms our hearts because we wanted to have it for a long time. Okay, cool. We view the Goliath as having a relationship to giants akin to the way Dragonborn do dragons. Okay, cool, whatever. Orc instead of half-orc. Similarly, there are elves, but no half-elves. Goodbye, Tanis. You can still play the 2014 versions. We already have 3 elf variants in the player's handbook. We also haven't been thrilled for years with anything that begins with half. What about halflings? The half construction is inherently racist. The half construction is inherently racist. They'll still be in D&D Beyond in the 2014 Player's Handbook if you want to play them. If you want to be a racist, go ahead and play the old D&D, and you can be a racist. Why don't you just go ahead and slum it and play TSR D&D while you're at it? You know, because obviously, according to PBS, anything coming out of old TSR was racist. Oh my God. Okay. We'll be making it easier to build your own background, and we'll have more backgrounds than the 2014 book had. This is an avenue to get a simple feat. This is us very carefully threading a needle. You don't have to plunge into the feats, but if you're curious about feats, a good way to get it simple. Okay, whatever. And they just kind of glossed over it, right? But what they're saying is we're not going to do half-elves. We're not going to do half-orcs because it's inherently racist. Now, this guy here, Daniel Kwan, I think he went and he wrote down some of the answers that other people had asked them about during this Creator Summit. When asked about race, and this is on his Substack, by the way, when asked about race, they talked about how multiple inclusion reviews are conducted internally before soliciting feedback from the community. Kyle, this would be Kyle Brink. Kyle Brink, I can't wait for white guys to leave the hobby. You're doing a damn good job there, Kyle. Congratulations. Kyle mentioned the spectrum of feedback they receive, and while they want to act on as much feedback as possible, some people may harbor negative feelings despite best efforts. It doesn't matter. You can't make everybody happy, especially the audience they've courted. They've courted Tumblr. They've courted Twitter. You can't make these people happy. There's nothing that's going to be good enough. And this has always been the case with D&D or any tabletop. Your table, your game, your rules, you can always tweak the rules to suit your group. That's always been the case. When we launch Adventure Engine, again, Adventure Engine at adventureengine.net, we are going to stress that the rules are guidelines, just like they used to do back in the day. The rules are guidelines, and you are free to tweak them to suit your campaign however you would like. We have loose guidelines. Some things are not explicitly stated in the rules. You can add certain characteristics or whatever if you would like to, but we don't have them outlined in the rules. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we basically want a system that's pretty flexible and pretty open for people to play the game they want to play, right? And play it the way they want to play it. But WotC wants to take you by the hand and say, hey, you got to do it this way, because if you don't do it this way, you're racist. So yeah, anyway, this is what he said. No matter what decision we make, there are some people who think that's the right play, and there are some people who think it's the wrong play. Our job is to, as much as possible, make the game as welcoming as possible to as many people as possible. And it was before Hasbro came along, before WotC came along. There's a reason that Wizards of the Coast bought TSR, because Dungeons & Dragons was a well-known brand before they had anything to do with it. Had a cartoon show, had pinball tables, had merchandise back in the 80s. This means there's going to be some part of that spectrum that's going to feel excluded no matter what decision we make, and that doesn't mean it's cool to leave people out, but sometimes it happens. It means it's a fact of what happens. My impression is that they're learning and trying their best to do the right thing. Positive intent is important. I wish Twitter would realize that intent is important. With regards to species, you noted that we're trying out species and we're getting feedback on it. We'll look at that feedback like we look at feedback on anything, and we will land on an ultimate decision. I can't tell you what that decision is today because we haven't finalized it yet. We're running it by inclusion folks as well. Sensitivity readers, guys, are coming to 1D&D. So they noted that the team originally wanted to use lineage as a successor for race. The team in the inclusion review process steered them towards species. This baffled me, Jeremy. It was clear that this is not set in stone. Player's handbook will have the following 9 species: human, dwarf, halfling. Oh my God, halflings. It's inherently racist. Goliath, dragonborn, elf, gnome, orc, and tiefling. Know that the half-elf and half-orc aren't going anywhere. They just won't be in the revised edition and will live on in the 2014 Player's Handbook and D&D Beyond. You know what else lives on? The original TSR rulebooks, which you can pick up online. You can pick up secondhand. You really don't need to buy any of this stuff. I'm just saying. You know where else they live? Other game systems. The team wanted to focus on the orc and the 3 elf variants already existing in the book. Frankly, we're not comfortable and haven't been comfortable for years with the half this and the half that. Oh God. So this is coming from someone who is a half on Twitter. How is the half construction racist? People are sometimes just halves or halflings, just lings. Ling my butt, WotC. I'm half Chinese, half Filipino, half VTuber. My existence isn't racist. I haven't moved past this yet. It's like, is bloodline purity inherent to D&D now? Yeah, this is actually worse. This is actually worse that you're not acknowledging that there are multiple races, that somebody could be of a mixed descent. Again, poor Tanis. That was a plot point, by the way. It's like, can the species not intermingle? Because, interspecies fornication just leads nowhere, I guess. Actually, an adventure engine, canonically, no. Humans are humans. Other species, never the two shall mingle. Well, they might mingle, but they're probably not going to reproduce, Anyway, be like dogs and cats living together. You're not going to get pup kittens or anything like that. But they're not stand-ins for humans. Humans are humans. And our other races are other races, and that's just the way it works. Have you heard about our Lord and Savior Pathfinder 2e approach to ancestries? It could be better. The best approach I've seen is Fantasy Age, which handles their races like rolls on various race tables. If you're only a human, roll twice on the human table. If you're a dwarf, dragonborn, roll 1 on each. Again, people, every time Wizards does something like this, people gravitate toward other game systems. Every time they do something like this, they're basically telling people to go play something else. And I don't think 1D&D is going to go the way they think it's going to go. Again, Pathfinder sales are through the roof right now. Lots of other game systems are selling very, very well because people are so burnt out on Wizards of the Coast. And a lot of it is this nonsense. Constant, like race. If something offends you, take it out of your game. Alter it for your group. That's all you got to do. But, this company is spending more time, from armchair observation, it seems like this company is spending more time trying to please Twitter and Tumblr than they are on trying to retain and build their audience. Like they're spending more time chasing social media clout and upvotes than they are trying to make sure that Pathfinder doesn't completely eat their lunch. They spent more time with the OGL 1.1 debacle than they did marketing the D&D movie. It seems like everything is like damage control, putting the forest fire out, trying to constantly appease an audience that is never happy. At some point, somebody's going to have to come into this company and be like, look, our primary goal is to make the best fucking game we can make and sell it to as many people as possible. And who gives a shit if Twitter is upset? Twitter is always upset. There's nothing you can do about it, right? But we're wasting our energy and our efforts trying to make sure nobody on Twitter complains about anything. Your lunch, Hasbro, your lunch is being eaten by all of your competitors. You should be freaking the fuck out. You should be panicking right now because in a couple of years, if 1D&D is not good or people don't take to it like they did 5e, because now there's so many other options and you shot yourself in the foot. Shot yourselves in the foot with the OGL thing and this, the constant race. if it lands with a thud, you are fucked because your customers are just going to go someplace else. And they're already starting to. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. So anyway, yeah, speaking of 1D&D, it is not a brand new version of D&D. It's not 6e. According to an attendee of the D&D Content Creator Summit, 1D&D is not even a new edition. It's just a revised version of D&D 5e. That's Daniel Kwan, and we went out to his Substack. He wrote about the experience of attending on Substack. They're effectively revising the current game that is in place. That's weird. It's a little weird. I mean, I guess if it ain't broke and it's selling, but it also feels kind of lazy too, you know? I don't know. It's always been a little unclear how much of a departure from the game as it stands 1D&D would be. First revealed in August and introduced as a new generation of Dungeons & Dragons, we were told 1D&D would be compatible with 5e, and even the designers no longer thought about the games in terms of editions. At the Content Creator D&D Summit on Monday, it was made clear that 1D&D is not D&D 6e or even D&D 5.5e. It sounds like it's more of a rules update than a brand new version of the game, so those anticipating sweeping changes will be disappointed or relieved. Basically, D&D with more anti-racist stuff because reasons. That said, with the slow release of new rules for 1D&D, we've already seen some rather significant tweaks. Wizards of the Coast introduced and then promptly axed a new reverse tiefling D&D race. Also split the D&D classes into class groups and placed emphasis on background. Yeah, according to Quan, the presentation explained you'll be able to run 5th edition adventures using the new rules, and new core books will provide guidance on how to interpret retired items and rules with the new rule set. These new books will effectively function as conversion tools. Sounds kind of underwhelming, doesn't it? Wargamer reached out to Wizards of the Coast for comment. You didn't get invited to the show, dude. You didn't get invited to the Creator Summit, so I don't know if they're gonna give you anything. This sounds very lackluster. It sounds like a freaking Band-Aid. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, obviously, if it's working, you don't want to completely throw it out. But again, other companies are eating your lunch. Everybody's recommending Pathfinder now. So many other game systems out there that are killing it. That Black Flag, I guess that's coming out. And yeah, there it is. There it is, guys. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up. It just never ceases to amaze me. Just the stupidity that WotC is at this point. I mean, they're just like, it's just insane. It's absolutely insane. Then we had the guy who wrote the original OGL. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was out there on Twitter saying that, like, we don't actually have game designers in charge of WotC. We have suits. You know, whatever. They're just, look, they're just a branch of Hasbro, and Hasbro's gonna Hasbro, and that's it. This is coming from a guy who, you know, collects Transformers and G.I. Joe stuff, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm gonna do that much anymore. And you know, to them, it's just like, yeah, it's basically Monopoly with dragons and stuff. You know, that's basically probably what it is to the suits at Hasbro. And when it serves its purpose or no longer serves its purpose, it'll get sold off, shut down, something. You know, I don't know. Licensed out, who knows? You know, one of these days, D&D is just going to be a shitty mobile app. You watch. That's all it's going to be. So I'm going to wrap this up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later. Help support the channel. Go to thereef.support and get early access to podcasts, videos, and other content. That's thereef.support.